Hello and welcome to Holistic Circle Podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy. And from sunny California, Loretta Breuning. Hello, Loretta.
Hi, great to be with you.
Thank you very much. I'm always looking forward to having conversation with a pro who's done a lot of podcasts. That's half the job that I have for me. So this is great. I can lean back and enjoy the show. So it will be an interesting conversation today. And I've said I've been waiting whole day for this. But before we jump into the good part, can you maybe give my audience a quick background, who you are, what you do, where you come from, so people have a bit better understanding, if you'd be so kind?
Well, short story, I guess. I was a college professor for 25 years in a different subject. I grew up in a home with a lot of unhappiness, and I was always trying to make sense of it. So I think that's why I had a personal interest in academic psychology, but that's not what I was teaching, but I believed in it. So this was like my belief system. And I thought everybody would be happy if I just followed the book of academic psychology. And then my life didn't work out that way. From having thousands of students and raising children of my own, not everybody was happy when I followed the book of academic psychology. So that's when I got interested in just going back to the research. And what I stumbled on was the research on animal brains. And I found that animals have dopamine, animals have serotonin, animals have oxytocin and endorphin. And these chemicals did not evolve to just make us feel good for sitting around on the couch. They evolved to motivate an animal to take action to meet a survival need. And I thought, wow, this explains everything. And why was nobody telling me that? And so I quit my day job and started focusing on this. Long story short.
Very short, very compressed, leaves a lot of things open, basically the perfect podcast opening, because I'm already hooked and I want to read more. So there you go. Was it 1 minute and 20 seconds? That's impressive.
Well, now so what else do you want to know?
Well, I guess now we start. Well, I think maybe let's start on the beginning. Not everybody is familiar with the basics. So I guess if we want to not, we have to spend a couple of minutes, bring the people in what these chemicals are and what they do and why we all have them. You said survival is one of the main things. You said animals have them, so we have them. But maybe if you'd be so kind, a couple of minutes, basic one-on-one, so that the people can ease in and think back on their high school days. It comes. But 2-3 minutes to remind us where we are.
Sure. No, nobody, what I'm saying is not taught by academic psychology, and it's not approved and blessed by academic psychology. This is purely my own connecting the dots of animals.
So as we say on this podcast, the good stuff.
Yes, thank you. And if anyone is getting this from the academic world, I'm happy to hear about it, but I can't imagine. So also everything we hear about.
No,
hear about these chemicals.
I usually don't break my guest. I just wanted in this case to tell you we're getting a lot of reputation now among the academics, and we get a lot of academic guests here on this podcast. So this is the newest trend. So basically, when you said if an academic is hearing it, I can guarantee you some of them will hear it, because we've been getting a lot of hayway over the last 2 months in the academic world. Sorry, now I'm silent.
Good. Well, what I said was a little bit different. I said if anyone did learn this in their formal education, then I'm happy. But I almost never hear of that. So you also hear about these chemicals in the media, and also not a very realistic view that we're getting. So if we go back to the animal studies, so dopamine is released when you see a way to meet a survival need. So for example, if an elephant is in a drought and it's looking for water and it sees an evidence of water in the distance, dopamine turns on, and its job is to say, wow, this can meet your needs. and it releases that energy you need, which we perceive as excitement, and it tells you this is a good time to invest your energy to go toward that. So you could see that dopamine is not meant to be on all the time, because if it were, then it would lose its power to alert us when we had a good opportunity. So if your dopamine is not on all the time, then nothing is wrong with you. That's normal. And all of this internet talk of like blaming your device for your dopamine, it's really the natural brain's function is to connect neurons when dopamine turns on, so the elephant can find water more easily next time, because the good feeling of satisfying the need today connects all the neurons active at that moment, and that's what wires you to then repeat the behavior that stimulates your dopamine.
All right. Is there any connection between dopamine and adrenaline? Because some of the things you explained sound like an ordinary person, almost like activating when you see. Is there a connection with that or no?
I'm sorry, a connection between dopamine and what?
Adrenaline. Is there a connection because
I'm not understanding the word.
adrenaline that
Adrenaline?
pushes the body, the body activity. Did I pronounce it wrong? I'm so sorry.
Yes. Okay. Adrenaline is I think is that what you're saying?
Yeah, of
Okay.
course, yes.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So they're related, but here's the way I think of it. So our brain is always making a decision where to give your attention to. Then once you pay attention to an input, you respond, this is good for me or this is bad for me. So adrenaline is saying, this is important, give it your attention, but it's not saying this is good for me or this is bad for me. So dopamine is saying it's good for me, and cortisol is saying it's bad for me. So for example, if you hear a loud noise, adrenaline is like, whoa, what is that? And then the noise, you listen, it's like, oh, that's my beloved has come home an hour early. That would be dopamine. But if you say that's a thief breaking into my house, that would be cortisol.
All right. Now, we jumped right in the deep end, so there's not like a good preparation, but I guess we're gonna come to it. And by the way, it's quite interesting. I don't know why. A couple of months ago, and I don't know the reason why, I was researching some of the things that on the list, endorphins, dopamine, serotonin. I don't know why I was researching it. Don't ask me, but I did. And I ended up for fun asking artificial intelligence for some question about that to a little bit narrow down my search. And basically it was a don't go there, totally forbidden, crazy chemicals. You can't use them, it's danger. You may build an atomic bomb, but do not play with serotonin. This is...
And trust your doctor. Let your doctor decide. Right?
I didn't even go that far. I just wanted some background information. It was more, it was not academic, but it was kind of research. I wanted to know more about the functionality. I was interested. Don't know how I came there, but I was very curious about, because I'm always into brain and consciousness and how the brain functions. So I was interested how the chemicals that the brain activates function. So that's why I wanted to know more about it. But actually, it's very little you can actually find about it. I was surprised.
Exactly. And this is what I was saying about how in academia, they don't talk about it in a natural way. They only talk about if you have a problem with dopamine that your doctor should fix. And then the current fad is that society has a problem, that we all have too much dopamine, and we're supposed to blame that on social media, which is, again, a disempowering. And instead of understanding my own power over my dopamine, it's just telling me that it's society's fault for getting me addicted to dopamine.
But is the functionality correct that when kids play games and they get that happiness with the games, is it at least technically correct that this produces basically dopamine? Is it at least technically correct?
Good question. So each brain is wired by its own experience. So if I were a hunter-gatherer, I would be growing up hungry. And if I would see a tree full of ripe fruit, and I would get excited, and that excitement would wire me to look for trees with ripe fruit. But in the modern world, our physical needs are met so easily that we look for other ways to get excitement. And so a child growing up in a world where that video game is their source of excitement, and each time they enjoy it, that builds the pathway to meet their need to interact with the world in that way, and they're not building it some other way. But the truth is one step more complicated. So every child has bad feelings sometimes. And I don't believe in labeling this as trauma because everyone is born weak and helpless. And so we all feel weak and helpless. We're all challenged to build skills so we could go out in the world and meet our own survival needs. So every child has this incentive to make bad feelings go away. So if you make bad feelings go away by playing a video game, then your brain says, oh, that works. And then you don't learn, you don't maybe develop other ways of making bad feelings go away.
So there's a huge learning factor with the dopamine creation in the brain. So that's basically, even if you are in stress, for example, you have stress in business, and then you drink alcohol and you release stress, it can create dopamine, although the activity itself is maybe self-harm, but we're enjoying the self-harm because it creates dopamine. Is that somehow basically how I understand the problem?
That's exactly. But what you often hear in the public wellness world is that the alcohol stimulates the dopamine. But a big part of that is not the alcohol itself. It's the expectation. Just like if I find a fruit tree and I expect that to relieve my hunger, so I feel good before I actually relieve my hunger. So it's the same with the alcohol. It's the minute I tell myself, I feel bad, I had a hard day, if I open this bottle of wine, then I will feel better. And that neural pathway comes from when I was a child, and I built a neural pathway that said, if I do this thing, it will make my bad feelings go away.
All right. I understood you, and now definitely thank you for one more time making it clear. I think we all got the connection, and I think that is very important because I get part of your job is to kind of reprogram it, or I guess part of what you do is trying to break one stream of dopamines to something else that might be much more productive or much more healthy. So I guess that is part of your work. But you mentioned other names like endorphins, serotonin. Are we quickly going through them, or is yeah?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. I just didn't want to make a long lecture, but happy to answer anything. So oxytocin is the good feeling that people call belonging or social bonding. But it's much more complicated than that. We see in the animal world that animals often stick to a group. But in fact, being in a group has a lot of negative effects for an animal. So they only stick to a group when they have a potential threat, like a predator. Then they run back to the herd and they push their way to the center of the herd where it's safer. So this idealized, romanticized view of a herd of like, we all support each other is really not how it works with animals. And that's why we have this chemical oxytocin that rewards you for sticking with the herd, even though it has some negative effects, because that helps an animal stay alive. Now, in the human world, again, we look for this good feeling of social support. But if it were that easy, then we wouldn't be all struggling with it. So the bottom line is it has costs and benefits, and we want that good feeling, but our brain is not designed to release it all the time. It's only designed to release it when it's safe to lower your guard. For example, if an animal is eating grass and it's surrounded by its herd, it can lower its guard and just eat the grass. But if it's alone, then it has to look for predators all the time. So when I want the feeling of oxytocin, but if I'm with people who I should not trust, then it would be wrong to lower my guard then. So that's the decision that our brain is designed to make.
Basically, the oxytocin is totally positive. It's like this is something we should seek for. Because a lot of my podcasts spin around the fact to motivate people to be jolly, to have friends over, cook for them. This is one of the main themes that I'm constantly promoting, that people should try to be social, good social. But that's there's good one with no negative side effects, or does it also have other side effects that I was not aware of?
Yeah, it has other side effects, but it's not necessarily the oxytocin. So the oxytocin feels good, but when you invite these people over, then that might have also some negative effects. Let's just say that if it were all good, then people would be doing it already. You wouldn't have to tell them to do it. So what are some of the negative side effects? Well, one example would be that when you're with people, they spend a lot of time speaking in a negative way about people who are not in the room. So a nice way to say that is they complain, So people get together and complain. So in the animal world, this is like I'm in a herd, but they want to push past me so that I'm the one that's exposed to a predator. And then when I'm in a herd, animals fight over food all the time. So if I'm your stronger animal, they're going to steal my food. It's just a very short answer to a bigger question. So also the negative effect, so they expect you to meet their survival needs. And again, we could give a lot of animal examples. So that's sort of some of the simple negative side of being in a herd.
All right. Can we quick go through the others before we then go into the therapy and healing, if you have the time, if you think we have the time? Serotonin is of course a famous one.
Sure. Yes, so serotonin is famous for antidepressants, and this is based on research from the pharmaceutical industry, which is highly flawed and not replicated and spread mostly through giving money to medical schools and to doctors who agreed with that view, which is finally starting to get questioned. Now, in the animal world, it has been known for a long time that animals are very competitive with each other, and whichever when an animal one-ups, I don't know if does that translate well, to be in the one-up position
Yes.
of another animal, they get more food and mating opportunities.
Yes.
And I use that word one-up because it shows that it's just a momentary thing. Like in one moment, you may be in the one-up position, and another moment you may be in the one-down position. When you're in the one-up position, your brain rewards you with serotonin, and that motivates you to seek the one-up position. Now, in today's culture, most people would say, oh, I'm a good person, I don't seek the one-up position. But of course they do. That's when you say, I'm a good person, you're putting yourself in the one-up position compared to other people who you think are less ethical than you are. And also another simple example is if you and I play cards and you need a certain card to win and you get that card, you're happy. So this is a natural, healthy, normal role of this chemical to give you a good feeling when you're in a position of strength so that you can meet your survival needs.
It's funny because when you started explaining, I wanted to recommend you poker as another analogy, and then you in the end put it yourself with the cards. So basically also
very good.
Also good stuff like volunteering and things like that. There is one of the explanation why it's one of those prime spiritual activities to go out and volunteer. That's, I guess, then connected to serotonin.
Yes, and it can often lead to healthy behavior, and we're all challenged to find healthy ways to do that. But an example of like an unhealthy way would be if you give money to someone who you know is going to use the money to buy drugs, you're not really helping them, you're really just enjoying the feeling of your own sanctity.
All right. And of course, endorphin, everybody more or less is familiar with. I guess this is one of the easiest one to explain.
Yes and no. So as you know, endorphin is the body's natural opiate, and the word historically means endogenous morphine. And it's chemically the same as opiate, and our body releases it when we're in real physical pain. And an animal benefits from this because if you're attacked by a predator and you're badly injured, you can still run to save your life because endorphin masks pain with a euphoric feeling for a few minutes. And that gives you an opportunity to save your life. But the good feeling is not meant to last because you need to know that you're injured so that you don't run on a broken leg, for example. So in the modern world, there has developed this cult of exercising to the point of pain in order to get an endorphin high. And where I live in California, this is a very unhealthy thing to extremes. And a lot of people just, their whole world is revolved around exercise and diet. And it still doesn't make them happy. And so the only solution they know is more exercise and diet because they don't understand dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. And we are not meant to chase endorphin. We are meant to seek the others, but endorphin is really only meant to be there for emergencies. But people do seek it because it feels good.
Again, I think there are others with even more complicated names. Is that correct? This is like a whole family that we're not going into, but these are like the big ones, right? All right. Okay.
These are the ones that I believe in because their only job is to make you feel good and to make you move forward. Whereas others, like people often talk about GABA, like, or I don't know which other, or endocannabinoid. I don't know which others you're thinking of, but I don't really believe in the others.
All right. I mean, if I had a hard time pronouncing adrenaline in the correct US way, then I will even dare to try the others. I'm not that
Yeah, I'm not
brave.
saying it's incorrect. I just didn't understand you.
No,
Sorry.
I'm making fun. You know, because you had my guy, you had Schwarzenegger as a governor. So I mean, if he can be your governor, I mean, I can pronounce. He's Austrian, like me.
No, he's from Graz.
Of course he is.
But also, when you say the American way, so it's interesting to know that in the UK, they don't say adrenaline at all. They say norepinephrine.
There you
I
go.
think, yeah, I think there was some time that researchers in both countries rushed to patent something at the same time.
Right. And of course, endorphin is super connected, I guess, to adrenaline because it's super important. Otherwise, most probably wouldn't work in the first place.
Yes and no. Once again, endorphin is physical pain. Adrenaline is emergency. So someone used the example like, let's say you're in a fight, and adrenaline is like, I'm in an urgent situation because I see someone's fist coming in my face. And that motivates me to pull back or to push forward, whatever solution. But endorphin is only if the person actually hurts me. Okay.
All right. How interesting. Wow. We're learning already
They're all
so.
working together all the time. And we
Yes.
have dozens of chemicals or hundreds, but these are the ones that are specifically for good feelings that are healthy.
All right. So I read a lot that some people legally, illegally using some of them to kind of make certain mind manipulations and stuff like that. Are we already far enough to a little bit talk about that before we go into the real healing that you do and the real improvement? Are we talking a couple of minutes about that stuff, or is this a no-go conversation?
Well, I guess in the US, I'm always worried about being sued for legal liability. But no, but I'm happy to talk to you about it because you're not in that mindset. So I'll just give you a simple example. So dopamine is cocaine. Endorphin is heroin. Um, Serotonin is like antidepressants, and oxytocin is ecstasy. Is that what you were asking?
No, actually, that is great that you're explaining it to me. Thank you so very much. Now I learned something. Actually, I've heard or I've seen that people really using like dopamine somehow like in sprays or certain forms, or where they're really using it directly, illegally or intentionally to manipulate and motivate or push people in certain ways. Is that something that you came across, or that is way too far from the dark side of the internet?
I haven't heard of that for dopamine. So
I know.
there's
Sorry, I just said the first
chemicals.
name that was on my list. I forgot which ones are precise, but I know it's some of them.
Yeah, I think oxytocin is the one that you're thinking of. And still, it's questionable about whether it works. But my question is about whether it would benefit you to try to have these chemicals all the time rather than in the moment that, or at a party, as opposed to in the moment that they're designed for, you know? So oxytocin is designed to build trust. And do I want to use my good judgment to decide when to trust people and when to lower my guard? Or do I want to drug myself and just trust whoever walks into the bar in the next 5 minutes?
Right? I think also there's serotonin sprays. I've heard, if that's correct.
No, I have not heard about that, but here's something to consider. So there's a blood-brain barrier and a lot of chemicals that are in your body but cannot enter your brain because the molecule is too big to pass the blood-brain barrier. Serotonin, people are often saying that 90% of your serotonin is in your stomach because it helps digestion. But that serotonin cannot pass into your brain. So there are two separate systems. And in the animal world, it makes sense. And this is what I explain in my books, that in the animal world, you do not get to eat until you're in the one-up position. Because if there's a banana between you and me, and if I'm a smaller monkey, I'm not going to reach for that banana because you would attack me and I might get a permanent injury. So I only reach for that banana when I think I'm in the one-up position. So serotonin has the double job of telling me to reach for the banana and preparing my stomach to digest the banana. So every one of these chemicals has multiple jobs, and that's been known for a long time. Like oxytocin triggers lactation and uterine contractions in mothers. So all of these chemicals have multiple jobs, and to really understand them, if you go back and back and back in evolution, it helps you to make more sense of it. Like oxytocin, believe it or not, it triggers the muscle in reptiles when a mother reptile has an egg and she contracts the egg-laying muscle to push that egg out. That's triggered by oxytocin. And they don't have any oxytocin in the rest of their lives except during sex, which lasts for 10 seconds.
All right.
Both males and females have oxytocin during sex. And in reptiles, they don't have any social trust. They don't lower their guard around other reptiles except during sex, which lasts for 10 seconds.
All right. So it's a good thing that this is some very obscure place in the internet that I stumbled on by accident, and no one ever will find it. So it's a good to know. Right. So we cleaned that out. So basically, do not play with stuff that you don't understand. So that's a good warning that we can give to everyone, even to the lawyers, whoever's watching. Please, children, do not. Anyway, the new generation is saying, "Hey Siri," so don't worry. Only old guys like me going clickety-clack and ending somewhere they shouldn't end. So, good news there.
Well, I'm not just worried about, like, there is an oxytocin nasal spray, but I think the bigger concern is that it doesn't work. And then you won't do the hard work of cooking dinner for people and inviting them and making good decisions about who to invite and what to say and whether to invite them for a second time, that's an important skill. And if you just think you're going to get it by putting something in your nose, then you don't build the skill.
And I actually think this is for animals. There are some of the stuff is for animals. So there we go. All right. So we all know what we shouldn't do. Okay, let's then go from the bad side. I hope now the rest of the podcast is the good side, the healing side, and your actual job. You just helped me, little Phil, to understand all the things I shouldn't do. And now please tell me what we should do.
Good question. Okay, and first I want to say that I'm not taking credit for healing people in the sense that I'm not a clinician. So I write books and I provide resources for people who don't like to read books, but I don't do one-to-one much. So the solution, first, we have one more missing piece, is the wiring that controls these happy chemicals. So each of us is wired by whatever triggered them in our own individual past. So whatever triggered your past oxytocin, that's what you're looking for today. Someone else is different. So maybe that's why one person can't stop playing a video game, another person can't stop drinking alcohol, and everyone has their own solution. So everyone can benefit from the skill of building a new neural pathway so that they don't overuse an old happy habit. So rather than saying this is bad, it's just that it's bad if that's the only thing you're doing because you're going to overuse it. So what is the alternative skill? Each person gets to decide, and that's what my books are about. So first, what are some alternative ways of sparking each happy chemical? Then how can I design a behavior to spark it that's right for me? And then how can I reward myself for doing that so that I repeat it again and again so that a new neural pathway gets built?
That's super amazing, and I honestly, I think I will buy. We will later, when this camera is off, you will tell me a bit more about the books, and it'll be one of my. I will order it today on Amazon, and if it's on Amazon, but I'm sure it is. It will be one of my summer program. I just had a beautiful conversation with some magician yesterday, a Gardnerian, and he gave me a great book, so that this will be one book for my summer, and one of yours will be the other one, because I definitely, I personally want to know more about that. So I'm very interesting, looking forward.
And I just want to say that it's translated into 18 languages.
I'll usually
sure
read it. Maybe I don't speak so well, but I most probably will buy it in English if it's okay. But 18 languages, that's impressive. Wow. All right. There's just something before we go with the rest of the podcast with the healing and the positive and examples, if you can give how you can trigger them from. But there's one sentence you said that is just so interesting, because there's some of my main themes happening over the last couple of weeks. You said the brain is giving you. And this is too intriguing to not spend a couple of minutes on this sentence, because it's one of my very deep passion of conversations. This fantastic game between consciousness that is running within and the consciousness that we actually think we see or we understand. And when you specifically say it's almost like a mother giving a little child something that the brain is giving you. So who is that brain, is my question.
Sure. So we humans have two brains. We have the limbic system inherited from earlier mammals, which is like the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus. All those little bits and parts put together is basically the same as all mammals. Then on top of that, we have this pink fluffy brain that animals don't have, that's capable of abstraction, which includes language and projection into the future. And so when you're talking to yourself, it's all in your pink fluffy human brain, but that does not control the chemicals. All of your chemicals are controlled by your animal limbic system. So if you want to feel good, you have to get it from your limbic brain, but your limbic brain cannot process language. So it cannot tell you in words why it's releasing a good chemical or a bad chemical. But the complication is two things. One is both of them are wired by childhood experience. And the other thing is you think you think your talking brain is rational, but it's really just rationalizing. It's trying to help you get what you want to feel good. But it doesn't know that. It thinks that it's rational and analytical because we get social rewards for pretending that we have the right impulses because the animal impulses are so taboo.
Absolutely. I thank you so much that people need to hear this as many times as possible. It's very important to understand, I guess, for maybe not everybody likes to hear it, but it's nevertheless good
People do not like to hear it. So I thank you for listening.
Another one, because this is a spiritual podcast, I think, but we should spend a minute and see like stuff like meditation and those spiritual practices. Where did they come into play in your understanding with it?
Sure. So I'll say a few things about that. So one, I don't know about the word in German, but in English and Latin languages, the word of being in good spirits is being in a good mood. And so historically, when people wanted to be in good spirits, they wanted to be in a good mood, but they did not understand the animal brain and the chemicals and the wiring. So they were not very like, what can I do to be in good spirits? And often having good ethical behaviors can lead a person to be in a better mood. So you could see how historically the two things went together. Now, I have to say that I took early retirement and started doing yoga classes. And I heard a lot about these things from yoga classes. And there was a lot that I did not agree with. These were very spiritual yoga classes in the sense that they were very critical of the yoga classes in an athletic club being used for athletics. And yet they were filled with this one-up feeling of, I am more spiritual than you. And we live in such a bad world that we're all feeling bad all the time because the world is so bad. And so I do not like these messages at all, and I stopped doing yoga.
Oh boy.
So I won't only...
You're afraid of the American lawyers. I'm afraid of all my spiritual guests, because the problem is I'm 100% with you. I should not say that. Very bad idea.
Yes, exactly.
There is a tendency, or there is a vast problem, and we all know it who've been, like, I'm more than 30 years in the spiritual world, and there is a lot of faking. There is a lot of pretend. There is a lot of stuff that is, but come on, it's the same with the church. Go to any Catholic church or whatever. There are people in the first...
That's it. Animal brain is the same in everyone.
People in the first row sitting there nicely dressed, singing the loudest, praying the loudest, and then to go home and beat their kids or whatever. And somebody silently sitting modest in the back there, doing the work, doing the things, and never showing off. So it's the same everywhere. So let's accept that we are who we are, and nothing we can do about it. But yoga, spiritual yoga, can be tough.
Yes. And again, I'm not saying there's nothing we can do about it, but step one is to acknowledge that it's there and it will always be there.
Right. But now we really would love to hear a little bit from you, from that part of the book where you explain what we can do to break the habits. And please give us now the last 15 minutes to tell us the good message, some of the things we can do, some of the examples, so people are more... I'm already motivated to read the book, but let's bring the last one on board.
Sure. So I always try to go back to animals. So if anyone has been in an animal training class, a dog training class, and I had the privilege of being in a dolphin training class, dolphin um, and goat training class. So this is all animals. You reward them for taking a particular action, and their brain gets wired to repeat that action. Now, if you've ever read about dolphin training, if you ask a dolphin to do a flip in the air and then you say, I'll give you a big reward if you do a flip in the air, the dolphin doesn't know what a flip in the air is. So instead, you just give it a reward when it does a little step toward the flip. And it will do that step over and over to try to get the reward. And then finally, it will flip. And then you give it a big reward. So this is how our brain is working all the time. But the fact is that when you were young is when you built the biggest pathways in your brain because of a chemical called myelin, which is like the paving material of the highways in the brain. And just like when you learned your native language, you built big neural pathways so the words come to you easily. But if you try to learn a language in adulthood, you don't have a lot of myelin in adulthood. So you have to work hard to learn the new language. And some people do the work, but most people don't. So most people don't learn a new language in adulthood. So it's the same with emotions. We got wired when we were young because we had a lot of myelin. And if you want to build new emotional pathways, you have to take a small step and give yourself a reward, and then take that step again and again, and maybe put it on your calendar to make sure you take it again and again. So how can you reward yourself? That's the challenge, because now all these rewards are taboo and you're trying to give up the reward. So how can you reward yourself for taking the new step? So first, you have to design the new step carefully and make it small enough that you could succeed. So like a dog has to learn to do one flip before you can expect it to learn a triple flip. Otherwise, it's just going to give up. So humans often, they make the goal too big and then they give up. So let's start with a small goal, then break it into a small step and give ourselves a small reward. So sometimes that new step is, sometimes you're trying to break, we talked about a habit. Let's say a person eats too much ice cream. So they want to build, like whenever they're in a bad mood, they eat a whole pint of ice cream, let's just say. So they could be making themselves a new pathway, a new habit to notice the first moment when they say, I'm going to go eat ice cream. So in Alcoholics Anonymous, they call that the trigger. But the word trigger is like blaming the outside world, but rather it's a thought that the minute you are feeling bad and you say, I'm going to go have an ice cream, you start feeling good. So you need to offer yourself another way to feel good. So for example, if you say, I'm feeling bad, I'm going to go watch a movie. Now you may think, well, I don't have time to just watch movies all day. But in the short run, you can watch a movie for 20 minutes and turn on a timer. And every time you honor your goal, you get to watch another 20 minutes of that movie. So you're very motivated to honor your goal. And giving yourself a reward in this way is much better than telling yourself, I'm bad for eating the ice cream. It's much better than telling yourself, I should run a kilometer, because that's not as attractive as watching 20 minutes of a movie, so you're not going to do it. And it's much better than telling yourself, I didn't feel bad, because if you really did feel bad, you need to admit that you're in that thought loop and then create an exit from that Autobahn to go and build a new Autobahn to build the new habit. Then you can stop watching the movie and have 100 other good habits. But first you need to find that exit to say, I am feeling bad. I need a happy habit to stop, to shift from the bad feeling to the good feeling without eating a whole pint of ice cream. And then in the long run, you could actually eat a small amount of ice cream. And I say this because I love ice cream. And my son gave me an ice cream maker, and I make my own ice cream, and I make it with healthy ingredients, and I eat a small amount. So we don't need to make rewards taboo, but we just need to manage the highways in our brain.
There's a million things I would like to say on that, but basically, first of all, I would like to tell you I 1000% understand you. And
Yeah.
but I can see how a lot of people will have a huge problem with the way what you just said. I can
Yes.
the way I know that you are in big trouble is because I am 100% on your side, and that's a bad thing. That's
Yep.
a
Yep.
sure
Exactly.
sign
It's
that you are.
not what people want to hear.
This is a sure sign that you are in trouble. It is like a compass. If it points my way, totally bad.
Yeah. This is not what people want to hear. And there are so many people selling messages that are desirable and popular, a fast, easy solution.
I know you know them, but I could give you the list. First of all, the comparison with animals. That's the number one. You're starting with anything. Then the fact that there is a mechanic inside that people may understand are not fully in control, that's number two. And we could go on. So the list is definitely there, but I think you know the list better than me of the critics that people
Yes.
have. And also then the misdirection. As you said, breaking those habits with other habits, I'm sure that there is an ocean of people who have a serious problem with that sentiment, especially all the modern trauma therapists who just want to make it go away. They will have a fantastic problem with this. And yes,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and I just read the other day again, reward and punishment. So I can see a lot of modern pedagogue. I think even more problems with it.
Yeah. So, but comparing people to animals, what I've discovered, it's not that people are against it, is that I am acknowledging that animals are not happy all the time and animals have a lot of negative responses and impulses. And that's what really bothers people. They want to think that the state of nature is effortless happiness and somebody stole that from you, and then somebody else needs to fix it and give it back so you can go back to effortless happiness. And it's like, what? There's no effortless happiness? That's what is the core of the problem. And so I wrote a book about that. That's my most recent one. It's called Why You're Unhappy: Biology versus Politics.
Oh, wow. You are very brave. But I guess a lot of people who follow that, and I'm sure that is why you're so successful, because there's the other side. I mean, as much as people are triggered, or as much as people cannot work it into their belief system, I'm sure there's many others who searching for some kind of a closer to the truth by acknowledging that we are just very smart animals, or that we are part of nature and we're functioning the same way. So I guess there are some people who are more happy with themselves or more content or whatever they are and don't feel triggered by it because, what's the problem here?
Well, that's exactly, but I will not say I'm so successful because I'm not. But there are lots of people who, as soon as they hear this, they say, wow, that's true. And they feel good about it because I have power to feel good rather than waiting for the world to make me feel good. And they love that idea. So I call these people brain hackers. But unfortunately, I'm in trouble with them because I don't like the word hack, because hack implies that like there's some simple fix.
Yeah.
But still, at least I agree with these people more than anyone else.
Right. So now I'm almost afraid to ask. I'm almost waiting for the next bomb to drop. I should have prepared myself better for this conversation, not just naively. I just read the basic stuff, but I should have been warned. Just please tell me that now you're writing these books and you think that people can use it on their own by reading it, by thinking about it, by going through the steps. So you think people can really work with it and transform on their own?
Oh, very good question. Well, ideally, therapists would read this
Good.
and they would give it to others. And a number of therapists and coaches have read it and do read it. But
Good.
the bottom line is that therapists and coaches can lose their license if they don't conform to the ideology of their group, whatever their certifying body is. So they're also, rather careful, and they also are trying to pay the bills, and they're careful about going outside the popular consensus of our time period.
Are you serious? Is this
Right?
such a big thing in America? But sorry, now I really lost you there completely. But where do you leave the conservative grounds here? What is it that you say that is so offensive here? I mean, maybe I'm stupid, but I did not get in any combination anything that goes out of the changing behavior, breaking. This is all. Maybe I'm European. Maybe that's my problem.
Well, a lot of therapists have been trained in the mindset that our problems are society's fault. And when you when you explain how a person creates it, then you're blaming the victim because they're just a victim of society. So that's the first problem. And then the second problem is that they have a disorder, and that needs to be treated like a disease.
Yes.
And if you explain their thought process, then it's like blaming a person who has cancer for the fact that they have cancer.
But that's mean. That's very mean-spirited to see it like that.
This is the accepted consensus right now. So
Yeah, but I think your work to see it like this is quite mean. I mean, I can see how you can twist it, but I think well, okay, it is the way it is. Well, Europe luckily is in those things often obviously a bit more liberal or more open with in that regard. I hope so. I hope that is true.
I hope so. I hope so. I hear a lot of victim theory among European wellness practitioners.
It's money.
That
It's cash.
it's popular.
Very
Right?
popular.
It's popular. It's who doesn't want to feel like, well, it's not my fault, it's their fault, and so they have to fix it.
It's absolute, but that is really just mainstream and money making. And that's not the intellectual educated part. I guess they see this much more closer to how you see it on many layers. I know a lot of therapists who would have no problem with all of that. But again, the money is being trauma. Trauma is the money being the victim. The victimization is just so wonderful. And I'm 1000% with you. I'm so bothered by it. But one must be very careful because then everybody can attack them that, make the victim, all of this story. And there are a lot of victims. There are people who go to horrible things. And I have so many here on this podcast who've been through unbelievable life suffering that, I mean, I had a woman who had cancer as a small child and got raped by her doctor during cancer treatment. And if that woman says to me, I have a childhood trauma, I says, of course you do, right? But then there's a whole bunch of others where I think I'm always very sensitive with words, and using a word, trauma, it must have a meaning. It must have a purpose. And some people really experienced it. And as I said, others had bad stories, bad things, maybe unhappy things, but then comes the theory that even small things can be for an individual person as much as horrible and this and that. So I can see all these layers and how complicated they are. But basically, yes, I understand.
So here's what I learned I love to read biographies, and I always read biographies that start with the person's childhood. And every person who we have heard of who's famous, and let's think about history, not just today, that they have had terrible childhood experiences, like terrible, like you can't believe how did they ever get out of bed with such bad experiences. So bad life experiences are quite common, and I don't know, maybe they're more common among people who have achieved something because it creates a certain ability to resilience is the common word. Whereas today we're growing a generation of children who are so over nurtured that they don't build skills.
Yeah, I know everything, but I'm trying not to say. I'm saying a lot of words with no meaning because whenever I start a sentence, I know I'm going into great danger. So this is why I'm stumbling about because I'm trying to say something and halfway through I'm like, no, red flag, don't do it. So I better shut up here right now because it's I'm just one last thing. Can you quick give people, is that the newest book, but a couple of books. So if I want to learn more about this, I'm really intrigued on my own for quite a time. Now I met you and now I can see, can you a little bit, not off camera, can we do it now? What do you think is the book I should read first if I want to know more specifically about all these chemicals and how they work in the brain? That's the stuff that I am most interested. What would you recommend?
Good. So, yes, so it's all in my introductory book. It's called Habits of a Happy Brain. Retrain your brain to boost your serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphin levels. And that's the book that's translated into a real lot of languages. Now, the latest one that I mentioned, Why You're Unhappy, Biology versus Politics. And I am happy to give you a PDF of any of these books. So I will give that to you right now. And I made a workbook that presents the information about how your happy chemicals work and how to rewire them in a very simplified way that like a 14-year-old, even a 12-year-old possibly can understand. And that's a book that I self-published so I can give the PDF in public, whereas the other ones that have a commercial publisher, I can't, just do that. And then I have 8 books altogether, and I recently wrote a novel to put this in the form of a story to make it more fun.
Now let's end this podcast with my last question, last theme of question. So, what you wish for the people, right? That more people read this book, but you want them to be more. I think I know, but tell us what you wish for people, that they become more aware, self-aware, more human.
So what I always start with self-acceptance. So to accept that this is going on inside you, rather than just seeing it in other people, because we can see it in other people and then they get on our nerves. And then we say, well, I couldn't be doing that because I hate it when they do it. And once you have self-acceptance, then you can accept that this is a pathway in your brain that you built for a good reason when you were young. You had perfectly good reason to get wired this way, but now the pathway is still there and it will always be there. But you have billions of other neurons that you could hook up to build new roads in your brain, but it's as hard as building a new road.
Very short last question. And like a society, imagine this what we're taught in school. I always like to ask this question. When this is something that we all would be common knowledge, would we change a society? Would we interact differently? Would it be a game changer if we would better understand us?
Well, to use an example, a lot of my readers who have read the books and then they write to me and they say to me, oh, I know I'm just doing that to spark my serotonin, or I know I'm just doing that for dopamine or whatever. So yeah, people could acknowledge that. And then we're still going to do it and we still need to do it to feel good, but we can be aware that we're doing it and not put ourselves down, but also if we're doing it in a way that hurts us, to find another way.
Okay, I mean, these are the small things with a big impact. Self-awareness, self-understanding, some reflection, better understanding how the machine works. I see how it's wonderfully unpopular, and that's why it's wonderfully lovely. Thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait my summer to read one of your books. I really want to learn, honestly. Thank you so very much, Loretta, and thank you to the audience staying with us.
Thank you so much for giving me a chance to say the unpopular.
Thank you.